Here we go. Good evening, and welcome to this week's edition of Media Reporter. I'm Jennifer Romano, the host for this week, and with me today I have Katheryn Farrara. Welcome, Katheryn. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Yes, okay. Katheryn is a former alumni of New York Law School, and she was the senior editor for the Media Law Journal. Is that right?
Media Law and Policy.
Media Law and Policy Journal. So today we are here to discuss constitutional issues with our audience, in particular the First and the Fourth Amendment. So maybe I think it's good if we start off with what is the First and Fourth Amendment?
Well, basically the First Amendment is your right to free speech, and the Fourth Amendment is what protects your right to privacy as a U.S. citizen.
And living in this post-9/11 climate, both of these amendments have really been under attack, and so many legal issues have come out of it.
They have. And what's interesting about it is that in the beginning, right after 9/11 happened, people didn't seem to care so much if their constitutional rights were being pushed aside a little bit, because everyone felt this immediate need for security, for a national sense of security. Now, 5 years later, we're taking a look back and we're starting to realize what it might mean for the future if we allow the Bush administration to continue doing what they're doing.
Well, if I remember correctly, there was the Patriot Act, which was this broad, sweeping provision that the Bush administration, it was almost like a midnight amendment that they did. Right. And, I mean, can you maybe tell our audience a little about what the Patriot Act was? Or is, as in still effect?
The Patriot Act wasn't something so much that I covered. We really covered a secret program that the Bush administration came up with right after 9/11, which was called the Terrorist Surveillance Program.
Right. I think the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act.
Right. Well, in 1970, I think a lot of people have heard of Watergate. Watergate was this massive explosion where all of a sudden the public became aware of the fact that the FBI and the CIA and the NSA, which is the National Security Agency, were conducting illegal searches, conducting illegal wiretaps, or what we would call surveillance abuses. After that, Congress passed an act called the Foreign Intelligence Security or Surveillance Act. For short, we call that FISA. Mm-hmm. And FISA pretty much created an umbrella of procedures where the government could kind of maintain a watchdog over the FBI.
So it was a system of checks and balances, like our government has a lot of those in place.
Exactly, to make sure that something like what happened in the 70s didn't happen again. A lot of that was...
What were those organizations? They were the FBI, the CIA,
and the NSA.
What is the NSA?
The National Security Agency.
Okay. What is the National Security Agency? I don't think I've ever even heard of that before.
So. Well, I think, in government these days, a lot of what the FBI and the CIA and the NSA do overlap. What they're really doing, I wouldn't be the person to tell you that.
It's very scary.
Right.
Very scary to me.
But with the FISA Act, pretty much what we had was a set of procedures to follow so that they couldn't abuse their powers.
In theory.
In theory.
Right.
The FISA Act also created what we call the FISA Court, who pretty much oversaw the program and made sure that when there was electronic surveillance or when there was going to be wiretapping, that they obtained a warrant and that they had probable cause. Now, probable cause under the Fourth Amendment, when you have a criminal that goes out and the police want to catch him or arrest him or search his home, the police have to show probable cause that a crime has been committed. Mm-hmm. Under the FISA court, in order for the FBI or the CIA or the NSA to obtain a warrant from FISA, all they need to show is probable cause that you are an agent of a foreign power, you are a foreign power, you're connected with an agent of a foreign power, or if you're a U.S. citizen, that there's probable cause that you are involved in kind of a domestic.
So you're saying essentially they created a much lower threshold for investigation.
Well, it's not. Well, that's the problem. The public, a lot of people initially when they heard that, they thought that was good because we're going after terrorists and they don't have as high of a standard to fulfill. But really, it is the same standard. You still need probable cause. You just need probable cause of a different thing.
Well, let's back up for a second, because I think pre 9/11, people didn't really, they weren't really looking into what the FBI and the CIA and the NSA were doing. It was just kind of don't ask, don't tell policy that our government is really good at. But I really think 9/11 brought a lot of things into issue. So let's fast forward 25 years now. What is the scope of the NSA post 9/11?
Well,
what have they been up to? I mean, I think that under the Bush administration, they've probably been given even greater liberties to investigate terrorist activity.
Right, and they were. And I think post 9/11, whether or not Congress or the public says they were aware of it, everyone was aware of the fact that there was a need to take some action. And there was a need to overstep.
You're talking immediately?
Immediately after 9/11. Everyone in this country wanted something to happen. And
emergency laws were put into place like overnight,
right,
essentially.
They wanted to feel protected. There was an act that was passed, I can't recall the name of it right off the top of my head, that pretty much gave President Bush the authority to take action whenever necessary, as long as it involved terrorist or possible terrorist attack. And so that's kind of what he went on.
Jeez, where are the limitations on something like that?
Right. And it's always interesting because at the time we didn't care if there were limitations on that. No one was thinking.
Everyone's still in panic mode.
No one was thinking ahead of time that we needed limitations on that. Then about a year ago, a big news story broke, and it turns out that 5 years after 9/11, the Bush administration has created something called the Terrorist Surveillance Program.
Yeah, could you tell us a little bit more about that?
The Terrorist Surveillance Program was a secret program created by the Bush administration to circumvent the FISA court. So under
the court that, let's reiterate, the court that was put in place to create a set of provisions that would check and balance these secret organizations.
Right.
Okay.
So instead of now needing a warrant from the FISA court, the Bush administration had the Terrorist Surveillance Program, which gave them leeway to pretty much do whatever they wanted in terms of surveillance.
What does surveillance entail? Could you give us a couple examples about what types of surveillance activities the NSA was involved in, or is still involved in, I guess?
For the most part, what they're talking about is phone taps, wiretaps, email, mostly email and telephone communication. At that point in time, the Bush administration, well, initially they denied it. And then they said, yes, it does exist, but it's not illegal. Their argument for it not being illegal is that they have the AUMF,
which stands for.
I actually cannot remember right now but it's pretty much
it's a pretty long acronym.
Yeah, it's a long acronym.
What do they do? More importantly, what do they do?
Well, it was just an act that was passed right after 9/11 that said that Bush you could take action